Welcome to the Creativity and Robots podcast, where we explore what happens at the intersection of human ingenuity, technological advancements, and creativity along creative flows from all walks of life. Our guest today is one of the most creative I've ever met. His name is Jim Conley, and he's directed education programs at major tech giants like YouTube and Twitter. We'll talk about the skills that creatives should build so they can be ready for the future, how to use AI ethically, and many other things. Whether you're a content creator, a marketing professional, or an entrepreneur, this conversation with Jim has something for you. Let's get in there, and I hope you enjoy it. Jim Conley, thank you so much for jumping in with me on this podcast, Creativity and Robots. And I have so many questions for you today. The first one is, what made you decide I need to build my own GPT? The challenge you're looking to solve, and for whom?
Yeah, I'm happy to. Well, and thank you. It's a privilege to be here, and to spend time with you is just a delight. So thank you for thinking of me and including me. It's always been a pleasure to work together. And to answer your questions, so yes, I did. I started a custom GPT, and I think what motivated me was, so you and I had worked together at Twitter, working on Twitter Flight School, which was a scaled education program for agencies and people who wanted to learn about Twitter advertising, badges, courses, webinars, seminars, things like that. We covered the gamut. And Twitter Flight School was fascinating and a wild ride for me because I was able to fulfill sort of a vision that I'd been working towards when I actually started at YouTube, working with the YouTube Creator Academy. And I'll tell you what that was in a second. But what we did at Twitter was we were able to turn this online education program that, frankly, when I got to Twitter, no one really wanted to touch with a 10-foot pole because it had been there, it had been great, and then it was moribund and decrepit. But the vision that I had was to say, look, this is a great platform, and we could really breathe some life into it. If we create value for the learner, we can also drive value for the business. And so what we were able to do at Twitter Flight School, which you helped, was to turn the scaled education platform into what became the single largest driver of leads into Twitter as an organization. And, that was the fulfillment of a vision that I'd had a long time ago, which was to take this function, which is primarily considered a bottom line cost center, and how do we transform that into a top line driver of revenue and value for the organization. So that's what I'm all about. And so when it came to this custom GPT, you ask, I was kicking around, and I left Twitter about a month or so after the acquisition. And one of the things that I kept thinking was, I've got all this stuff in my head. Like, I've got all this stuff in my head that we just did. And part of it was like, either if it was to make room for new stuff or just to sort of preserve my sanity, I thought, I need to get this out of my head. I need to put this all on paper while I still remember, while it's fresh. And so I spent a lot of time really just thinking, what did I do? How did I do it? What did we do as a team? Like, what were the big pieces of the puzzle that we put together? So I started drafting what at the time was going to be a book. I had a wonderful old boss, Rachel Sterling, used to say, Jem, you need to write a book. We need to read your book about how you do all this stuff. And so I thought, well, I'll get this all out of my head. I'll put this all on paper, and it was going to be a book. And so as I started writing more and more, I thought, actually, this doesn't have to be a book. And around the same time, ChatGPT was coming up. And then I learned I had this whole course written out, 100 or so pages, which I had called Lead Revolution. A collaborative approach to customer engagement as a revenue engine. So I made this course, and I thought, I could actually put this course, which is all my brain, into a custom GPT. And so that's what I did. And so the custom GPT is now called Customer Ed Strategist and Growth Advisor. And it's really all about helping people to design customer education programs that are built from the ground up, not just to be a cost center to educate customers and then forget about it, but to link it to the rest of the business and to use it as a driver for growth and the creation of value.
I'm assuming ultimately you have a goal of making this bigger or useful for bigger organizations. So how do you see these big folks taking advantage of the GPT?
Well, it's a great question, and I'll be very honest with you, and you've known me long enough. I'm pretty transparent about stuff. I don't know that my vision for it is fully baked, right? But I will tell you, it's really more at this point, I'm on kind of a personal mission about it, just from my experiences. I think one of the things I've experienced is that organizations do not have high enough expectations for what some kind of a learning function, the value it should deliver into the org. They just don't. Because no one's told them what it could do. No one's shown them what's possible. So they think, okay, well, I guess this e-learning course is out there. I guess that's good enough. I guess that's all we can do. I guess we're done. And my whole thing is to really to speak to the business leaders to say you should be expecting a lot more from these people and from this function. And if you don't have people who know how to pull the value out of this and to turn it into something that really drives top line value, this GPT can actually help them do that. And so partly I'm on just a personal mission to really elevate the value of this function within, across industries, and to share what I've learned doing it, because it was hard. It was hard. And it required a lot of creativity, a lot of cajoling, a lot of selling internally on the vision of what's possible. But having had some success doing it, I thought, okay, I wasn't crazy. This could happen. And I bet I could help or show other people what they could do to also see value from their effort.
Can you walk us a little through that process, how it went for you? We know it's a lot of hard work, you just said, but were you referring to previous documentation that you created? Maybe this book that people have been asking you to write? How did it work for you?
It was a straightforward creative process. I do have one hack that I can share and tip that I found really helpful that might truly, if people get nothing else from this, they would take away. So look, in my case, it was literally getting the stuff off my chest, literally just writing things down, talking about things like, okay, well, where in an organization should a customer education program sit? Should it be in marketing? Should it be in operations? Should it be in sales? Well, the thing is, I've done this job from all of those departments. They each have pros and cons. So how do I talk about that? Let's get that out there. And so in my case, I literally sort of locked myself in for days at a time and said, you know what? I'm not going to get a haircut until I finish this lesson on how to cultivate internal alignment for your vision, right? I would just sit there and kind of lock myself in to write this. And I have a wonderful tip in how to do this. There's a great, she's a friend of mine. She has a terrific coaching business. She's called Susie Moore, and I would recommend everyone check her out. She's the real deal. And I was always a little bit suspicious of the coaching sort of stuff. Met Susie Moore, and I thought, oh my God, this woman is incredible. And so I signed up for her newsletters, and one of her newsletters had this great thing. It said, you hear about people having a writer's block, but you know what you never hear about is someone having a talker's block, because if you open your mouth, you're going to talk. And so one of the things I did, one of the shortcuts was I might have a lesson, right? I might have a lesson in mind. And the lesson in mind would be things like how to design effective customer education programs based on business objectives, right? And so I'm like, okay, well, I know I got a lot of talk about here because I've done this, but I would sit down to write and I'd find myself a little bit frustrated, a little bit slow to just dig in. And so one of the things I did was to say, okay, if I were going to talk about this to someone, I know I could talk about it, but it doesn't necessarily mean I could write about it. And so I had an old microphone that I bought. I don't even remember why I bought it. And I would plug it in and just turn on dictation in Google Docs and say, okay, I'm going to talk about how do you develop effective customer education programs based on business objective. Well, first let's take a look at the objectives. And just started pretending I was talking to someone. And, inside of 15 minutes, all of the salient points would come out. Like they were all in my head. I knew what I wanted to say. I just struggled to put them down in writing. And so once I had the basics down that were out of my brain and out of my mouth, it was much easier at that point to actually go to ChatGPT, upload my transcript and say, help me come out with the salient points here. Help me organize this into an outline that could effectively teach someone how to design effective customer education programs. And boom, 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 there it was. So it was really two parts, right? There was the part my brain, my mouth. Then there was the part in ChatGPT. And not to jump ahead, but I want to jump ahead to one thing that's been on my mind a lot
Let's go for it.
About GPT, because I think this is a great example. I found myself watching a lot of RuPaul's Drag Race in the last few weeks. A lot of All Stars, season 14. Like I've really found myself just getting back into it, and I hadn't watched it in a long time. And it's quite joyful. And there's something that RuPaul says, which is, drag doesn't change who you are. Drag is going to reveal who you are. And I've been really thinking a lot about that in terms of generative AI, right? It's not going to change who you are, or it's not going to make you something different. But I do think it's going to reveal who you are in ways that are accelerated, and in ways that have bigger scale than you've probably ever seen before. And I truly believe that, and I find it very encouraging and hopeful to use these things, especially as creators, as tools, right? It's not doing the work for you. It's revealing what you want to say, like in the case that I just mentioned of just sitting and talking to it. And yeah, that's basically the point I wanted to make, is I think that it's not something that changes who you are, but it is a tool that can really accelerate or reveal what you have to say.
What I've been noticing is that there's a bit of a backlash. It's kind of like we are all over the honeymoon stage, which doesn't mean ChatGPT sucks. It means that now we're kind of like coming back to reality and going like, okay, it's a useful tool, but it's not the end all, and I feel that's when like the creators, the creatives, the people that build can actually make the difference. How do you see this impacting the future of educational content? Now, not only you need to do your job, but a new part of your job that you'll have to do even more, because it's always been there, is like showing this value, right? Why should I get a human to work with ChatGPT and help me use it for educational content, where I can just go there, use your ChatGPT, and be like, help me create a training so I can teach folks how to use my product?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair question. And actually, sort of two things come to mind on that one. The first one is in the creation of my own course about, lead revolution, a collaborative approach to customer education as a revenue driver. One of the things that I wanted to come up with was, I felt it was important for me to come up with my own kind of ethical framework that I would apply to this. And so I had this idea, and it was, easy to remember. It was 3 Ds. And so I sort of worked on this framework for the application of AI in this work. And my 3 Ds, and someone else's might be something different, but mine were disclose that you're actually using Gen AI. Discern, meaning look at what comes out and actually look for things like, is it accurate? Is there bias? Is it hallucinatory, right? So disclose, discern, and then discuss, meaning be open to the feedback that comes back, someone pointing out things that are wrong, be open about the discussion of it. So I just dropped that out there to say, like, that's sort of the framework that I created for my custom GPT. And I think there are lots of frameworks, but I think for any creator, for any educator, don't skip that step. Like, do decide for yourself, like, what will matter, what will be important, and how you use the information. Because if you don't, I just think it's very risky to not have any kind of framework or any kind of ethical application to it, right? Now, to your question about how will this impact education? Well, I think it really means that we need to work very hard on articulating the intrinsic motivations for someone to learn something, right? When a calculator can do addition and multiplication, subtraction, division, etc. for you, you're no longer teaching you may not be focused so much on how to do those things, but you need to be focusing on, like, why would you do it? What is a tip, and how would you calculate a tip, and why would you calculate a tip? So you need to really focus on the surrounding motivations or the intrinsic value of actually doing that work. And I think the same thing holds true for education. You will have to focus more on the intrinsic value of knowing these things. And, like, why is it important to know these things becomes what you teach as much as the subject itself.
Who would be the best people to partner with to kind of like take this vision, show the value, make sure you're creating something that actually is accurate, or as accurate as we can be for what we know, rather than just regurgitating, something that sounds like it's accurate, but it's all gibberish?
Look, this is a very weird answer I'm going to give you. But, like, the weird answer that I would give you to this is you should collaborate with the memory of your grandmother, right? Who would tell you, hey, there's right and there's wrong. You should collaborate with the memory of your first boss who helped you make an ethical decision when you were faced with an opportunity where you didn't have to. You should collaborate with your superego, right? Who's like the cop telling you, you know what, it's really not right to do that. I know that's a weird answer, but I think that we're all in this together. I don't think that there is an authoritative source on these things. There are just a lot of opinions. But I think that what it comes down to is the decisions that we make as individuals to choose to do something that we think is advantageous to us and getting something over on someone else, or we make a choice that's actually honest and we're capable of revealing what we don't know, and we're capable of approaching a situation with humility and with an idea that maybe I won't be beat up if I say I don't know something, but I might be able to bring people along to help me figure it out. And I think that's all you can do, is, especially in these early days, is approach it with a bit of a Kermit the Frog mentality of, hey, I'm just trying to put on a show here. I don't really know everything that's happening. There's crazy stuff all around me. But I think if I'm honest about it, then I can get people to try to help me succeed.
One thing that I hear a lot as you're talking is ethics. One of the things that I've seen a lot lately, part of this 2024 AI backlash that I call it, is the current situation in which you got OpenAI being sued by the New York Times. You got Midjourney being sued by a whole list of, I think it's like 16,000 artists. How you feel about this conversation of the ownership, whether, the content scraping, do you think it's fair for these companies and what they say of, hey, this is just like a human reading a book and then like digesting it and giving their own take on it?
Well, I think that I'm not qualified to have a particularly strong opinion on the macro issues that you describe in terms of the New York Times and OpenAI. I don't feel qualified to even venture into that territory. But I guess it goes back to sort of like the my 3Ds, right? Which are disclose, discern, and discuss. I mean, that's why I had to come up with them for myself. I think in my case, I was lucky because I had all this stuff rambling around in my head that actually was my work, but it was informed by all the peers I've ever worked with, right? It was also informed by all my other colleagues and the people who asked me questions or the people who helped me out. Um, I do think that technology in general has always been, and I think one of the roles that it plays in society is as a forcing function to encourage us to ask questions that probably need to be asked at the time. In some ways, I think it's interesting. I never thought of this before, but I think in some ways, art and technology play really interesting complementary roles in society, where I've often thought that the best art is art which poses questions of the artist's time and day that the artist is fixing in a material so that those questions can be asked into the next generation. And so artists, I believe, are, again, encapsulating questions that they have, the questions of their day, fixing them in art, and then sending them out into the future for future generations to ask those same questions. What was she thinking? What was that look in her eye? What did that feel like when he saw that, right? And in some respects, it's occurred to me through this conversation that I think technology is also asking us to ask questions like, what's fair? Who owns these ideas? Who should profit from them? And they're questions that really society has to ask ourselves. Again, I don't pretend to have any of the answers, but I think that there's a lot of value in knowing what the right questions to ask are.
Through your career, what I see is that you've spent quite some time educating creators, right? You were part of the YouTube Creator Academy, which I have very fond memories of because it's literally what allowed me when I moved into LA from Buenos Aires. That's how I started meeting other American YouTubers, and collaborating with them, and it also taught me a lot. Like, I remember the first time I went into YouTube Space LA, I was like a kid in a candy store. I couldn't believe it. You've been educating creators, you've been educating people that have this certain itch to do something new. So for those that are just getting started or have been doing this for a while, what do you see as the main skills they should focus on so they can continue, working on content creation or educational content?
Well, it was really fun, and I'm really grateful for that experience, having created the YouTube Creator Academy. It wasn't just me. It was my team who built the tools, but there were so many people behind the scenes to help define the strategies, to prove them with data, to write the stories. I was lucky to be on the forefront of the education team that put that into the world, but it was the work of many, many talented people. And it was a really fun time and a total career highlight to have and a big responsibility to have in your hands the passion of creators who want to start a channel, grow an audience, build a business was a wonderful responsibility. I guess what I would say about that is I'm also incredibly proud that when you see how the creator economy has evolved, that this band of people, myself included, but many, many others, this band of people who were there really laying the groundwork for what has just mushroomed into what is predicted to be like a $500 billion business in the coming years. So that was a total privilege. But to get to your question about what skill I think is the most important, well, I'll just tell you what I often used to say about that experience was, no one needs me. Because you could pretty much Google anything that you want to know or to do. So you didn't really need me. But what I was there for and what my team was there for and what all of us were there for were to engineer experiences that would tap into a creator's intrinsic motivation to try something, to do something, to change a behavior. And maybe that intrinsic motivation came from, I mean, I'm dating myself here, but like maybe that intrinsic motivation came from being in a course that was led by, I'm forgetting the names, like Tyler Oakley, or, you know, people like that. Like maybe it was that identification, but what we were really looking for was just how do you create an experience that taps into someone's intrinsic motivation. And so I think the skill, if there's a skill that people want to put out into the world, I think the skill is really about harnessing your curiosity, harnessing your intrinsic motivation. You could do anything other than create. You could scroll through your phone forever. You could respond to emails. You could go for a walk. There's a million things you could do besides create. But I think the job of the people who are really trying to push creators and the whole creator economy forward is to harness and capture their intrinsic curiosity, their motivation to express themselves, but also to tell them that there are people who want to hear what you have to say, who want to see what you're going to express, and that your expression is actually going to take all of us and take the world further into a better place. And I think that's sort of what underscores it.
Your passion comes through as you speak. You know, it's very clear to anyone listening to you that you're a passionate guy. You're not phoning it on this one. So what makes you passionate about education?
Oh, what a great question. Look, I couldn't read the blackboard. I have low vision. So I was born with a condition called nystagmus, which means my eyes shake back and forth. You know, I can see okay, I can ride a bike, I can cross the street. I lack acuity, meaning, you know, I could see the teacher was writing something on the blackboard, but I couldn't see it. And that did a couple of things. I think the first thing is it drove just an incredible amount of frustration that brewed in me as a young person who was really eager and desperate and wanted so badly to learn, but had this impediment, you know, to learning. And so I think that really motivated me to find ways to teach or to get a point across that were more than just writing something on the blackboard. The other thing is when it comes to technology, I used to have assistive devices to read books. So for a while, like as a fourth grader, it's actually pretty cute. Like I had glasses and I would carry these books that were like as big as I was down the hall. And then later on, I got a microfiche reader where all my books were on little microfiche and I would use the assistive technology to keep up. So, you know, it's really like a gateway to learning so that intersection of technology, education, motivation is just something that the circumstances in how and where and who and to whom I was born, I think really coalesced into someone who's very passionate about education, about technology, but also about recognizing our personal limitations and the things that hold us back and finding ways to move around or through those things to achieve what you want to achieve. And that's what I'm really passionate about. I took that passion and, you know, one of the things that was a real support for me was, you know, I became a class clown, right? Because I needed to rely on the other students to tell me what the teacher wrote on the board. So it really helped me connect with other people. And it just, you know, it's part of who I am. I went to college. I was an English major. I always loved storytelling and stories. And then I ended up getting a master's in education because it was what I was still, you know, super passionate about. And at the time, and it's no longer there anymore, but at the time, Harvard Graduate School of Education had a technology and education program. And I was like, yes. And so I jumped into that, and the rest, well, we already covered in the last 20 minutes. So, but that's really kind of my origin story, I guess you could say, and what makes me really passionate about education, technology, and the expression of oneself.
Awesome. Jim Conley, thank you so much. before we go, let's remind folks how we find the educational GPT you built. Where do we go?
Well, I'm assuming you'll put a link in the bio or something.
I will put a link everywhere.
But it's called Customer Ed Strategist and Growth Advisor. Customer Ed, one word. Customer Ed Strategist and Growth Advisor on the OpenAI GPT store. And have at it, pound away. Let me know if it works. Let me know if it doesn't work. Let me know if it hallucinates. And I'll do my best to keep improving it with whatever's in my brain. And thank you so much for your partnership and all those projects that you and I've worked on, but also for considering to speak to me today. I'm really appreciative. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jim. It's been a pleasure. You're someone I've learned a lot from. So, it's always nice to talk to passionate people that are driven, that want to do more, but that also, do things their own way, which is what I appreciate, because there's enough boring stuff in life and enough boring people, so might as well, be ourselves. So, Jim, thank you so much for your time. And for those of you that are watching, listening, whichever way you got here, you'll have a link to the Educational GPT so you can access it. And of course, you can find Jim on LinkedIn. Can people find you anywhere else? Do they find you on LinkedIn?
They can find me on LinkedIn. They can find me. I keep a low profile on the internet, but pretty much they can find me on LinkedIn. So
that's very wise, Jim. Okay, thank you so much for your time, and for everybody else. We'll see you on the next episode of Creativity and Robots, where we intersect creativity, these robots, life. We're human. So whatever is happening and it's relevant to us, we'll try to talk about that. Thank you so much. Thank you for watching all the way. If you want to watch or listen to more of these interviews, remember to subscribe. You got the button in there, so go ahead. You can press it. Thank you and see you soon.